Welcome, everyone, to our final unit, the practice of forgiveness and reconciliation. This is Dr. Moore. Forgiveness is often hard to do, but it is a powerful way to reduce negative emotions and improve your own health and happiness. In this unit, we attempt to define forgiveness and recognize it is a bit mysterious. We look at some misconceptions about it and look at the journey along the path to forgiveness. Reconciliation is not the same as forgiveness. While forgiveness restores us to ourselves, reconciliation restores us to one another. Forgiveness is something that is entirely up to you and can lead to reconciliation. Forgiveness is a powerful choice you can make when it is right for you that can lead to greater well-being and better relationships. Some of you may be considering the possibility of forgiveness and reconciliation. When we have been wronged, typically the responses include getting back at the other person or avoiding the other person altogether. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is a conscious choice to let it go and provide mercy that another person's actions do not deserve. Paradoxically, by forgiving another, we help ourselves. A growing body of research is finding that people who forgive are more likely to have fewer episodes of depression, to have higher self-esteem, more friends, longer marriages, lower blood pressure, closer relationships, and lower rates of heart disease. So let's explore this thing called forgiveness. What is it? In her book, The How of Happiness, social psychologist Sonia Lobomirsky calls forgiveness a shift in thinking towards someone who has wronged you, such that your desire to harm that person has decreased and your desire to do him good or to benefit your relationship has increased. Forgiveness, at a minimum, is a decision to let go of the desire for revenge and ill will toward the person who has wronged you. Now, researchers are very clear about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Forgiveness is one person's inner response to another's perceived injustice. Reconciliation is two people coming together in mutual respect. Reconciliation requires both parties working together. Forgiveness is something that is entirely up to you. Although reconciliation may follow forgiveness, it is possible to forgive without reestablishing or continuing the relationship. The person you forgive may be deceased or no longer part of your life. You may also choose not to reconcile. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgive and forget seem to go together. However, the process of forgiving involves acknowledging to yourself the wrong that was done to you, reflecting on it, and then deciding how you want to think about it. Focusing on forgetting a wrong might lead to denying or suppressing feelings about it, which is not the same as forgiveness. Forgiveness has taken place when you can remember the wrong that was done without feeling resentment or a desire to pursue revenge. Forgiveness is not condoning or excusing. Forgiveness does not minimize, justify, or excuse the wrong that was done. Forgiveness also does not mean denying the harm and the feelings that the offense produced. And forgiveness doesn't mean putting yourself in a position to be harmed again. You can forgive someone and still take healthy steps to protect yourself, including choosing not to reconcile. Forgiveness is not justice. It is certainly easier to forgive someone who sincerely apologizes and makes amends. However, justice, which may include acknowledgement of the wrong, apologies, punishment, restitution, or compensation, is separate from forgiveness. You may pursue your rights for justice with or without forgiving someone. And if justice is denied, you can still choose whether or not to forgive. Indeed, forgiveness is a complex phenomenon. The authors of the text offer several definitions to help us get an understanding of the nature of forgiveness, and then they list the following elements which make up a definition of forgiveness. You are focused on the present after reflecting deeply on the past. You desire to be free of negative patterns that reduce the quality of your life. You are willing to do your own interior work, regardless of what the other person is willing or able to do. And you develop compassion for yourself and others, giving up on the idea of getting even, therefore enabling yourself to live more freely and happily. People harm one another, not just by what they do to each other, but also by what they say and don't say. Relational harm occurs in a lot of different ways. Things that people say and do cause us to ask, does this person know who I am? How am I going to outlive the impact of this experience? Does this person know the harm they caused? How am I ever going to forgive this person? It can be hard to practice forgiveness, but remember, forgiveness is something you do for yourself. One way to start is to write a letter of forgiveness. You don't have to send it, but write it out. Write what happened and how it affected you, what you wish the person had done, and end with a statement of understanding and forgiveness. Remember, this is for you. It will help you process your emotions and get out of one of the eddies in the river that the authors talk about. Hurtful and regrettable messages make it difficult to maintain closeness in a relationship. Evangelisti identified types of hurtful messages. They include accusations, evaluations, orders or commands, a statement of preference or comparison, a threat, and even advice. Be sure to study these types and the examples given on page 305. Be sure you can identify the type of hurtful message. I'll give you an example on the exam, such as, "You make a lousy mother." And you should be able to identify this hurtful message as an evaluation. This chapter goes into some discussion over whether forgiveness is a decision or a process. It's an interesting question, and a couple of process models are presented. The point the authors make is that it is both. A decision is made to move forward despite the hurt and not be a victim of one's feelings. Process is involved in working through. I would also add that decisions are made during the process to continue working through difficult thoughts and emotions. Forgiveness is not for sissies. It takes strength, hard work, and commitment. Leighton identifies an interesting model with 3 stages in the process: impaired innocence, obsession, and transcendence. At the endpoint, transcendence appears to be common across various forgiveness models. Transcendence is when the person stops obsessing over the past and begins to let go of the pain. There is a realization that one's own experience joins him or her with others who have experienced suffering, and there is compassion for self and for others. One of the discussion questions this week asks us to consider why forgiving yourself can be harder than getting forgiveness from others. Being able to forgive oneself is important, because difficulties with self-forgiveness are linked to suicide attempts, eating disorders, and substance abuse. Feeling bad when you do something wrong is natural. This motivates us to do better next time. Self-forgiving involves owning up by acknowledging and taking responsibility for wrongdoings. This is what gets us started. The next step is to reconcile 2 different images of ourselves, what Carl Rogers called our ideal self and our actual self. We need to somehow integrate these 2 aspects of self. The person we think we are and would like to be, our ideal self, may resist the truth about the part of ourselves that told a lie or disregarded his parents or betrayed a friend. It may seem that as long as we withhold forgiveness from ourselves, then we cannot possibly be the person who did this deed. In order to gain some integration of the 2 selves, we must be willing to extend empathy and compassion for ourselves, in the same way we might offer it to someone else. Even though we may have forgiven someone, there is still relational distance between you and the other person. Reconciliation refers to the process of repairing a relationship so that re-engagement, trust, and cooperation become possible after a transgression or violation. It's about building bridges. Shriver has a metaphor for the strands of the cable that span the gap between two people. The first one is the strand of truth, which involves the ability to talk about what happened and its effects. The second is the strand of forbearance, which refers to not seeking revenge or punishment for what happened. It means giving up resentments. The third strand is the strand of empathy, which means expressing an understanding of the other person's problems and needs. It goes both ways. Eventually, mutual empathy or being in each other's shoes helps to bring the two closer together. And the final strand is commitment to the relationship out of awareness of our interdependence. Here, there is a sense of how our actions affect each other and recognition of our responsibility to each other. Important interactions occur along these strands, all four of them, which helps us to recognize our interdependence, how we need to work together in order to reach our goals. Like forgiveness, reconciliation is a decision and a process. But here, both sides have to work at it. How does someone who has been hurt by someone else decide to work on reconciliation? The role of communication in this process has been studied, and it was found that those who have been harmed by others are more willing to renegotiate a relationship if these three things are likely to happen. First, there is essential agreement regarding the nature of the violation to the relationship. Secondly, the other has acknowledged the hurt experienced. And finally, the offending party will make an apology for the hurt and pain caused.